In January 2016, at the Cyclocross World Championships in Zolder, Belgium, a 19-year-old favorite climbed off her bike in the middle of the race. She did not crash. She did not look hurt. She just stopped, walked to the pit area, and waited. A few minutes later, officials rolled one of her spare bikes into a small white tent, pressed a tablet against the frame, and the screen lit up. There was a motor inside it. Not a rumor. A real electric motor, buried in the tube under the seat, wired to a battery, switched on by a button hidden under the handlebar tape. For years, fans had joked about hidden motors. That afternoon, it stopped being a joke. Her name was Femke van den Driesche, and she was about to become the first rider in the history of the sport caught with a hidden motor in competition. The first. And so far, the only one. Cycling had already spent 2 decades fighting blood doping. EPO, transfusions, testosterone, the whole pharmacy. People stopped trusting riders' bodies a long time ago, but this was different. This was the bike itself cheating. And once you have seen the proof that a motor can hide inside a frame and never be spotted with the naked eye, you cannot unsee it. Every impossible acceleration. Every rider who pulls away while barely seeming to pedal. Suddenly it all looks suspicious. Here is how they caught her. The UCI had just rolled out a new weapon, a scanner that uses magnetic resonance to find motors, magnets, and solid objects hidden inside a carbon frame. That day in Zolder, officials scanned around the 100 bikes. Almost all of them came back clean. One did not. The motor was a Vivax, roughly 22 centimeters long, slotted into the seat tube next to a battery. The control was a tiny Bluetooth switch tucked under the bar tape, close enough to press with a thumb while riding, invisible to everyone around her. The motor fed power straight into the cranks, so the pedals turned a little easier on every stroke. When the scanner lit up, the UCI president stood in front of the cameras and called it exactly what it was: technological fraud, mechanical doping, cheating with a motor. And she may not have been the first time people wondered. Months earlier, at a World Cup race on the brutal Koppenberg climb, sharp-eyed viewers had already noticed something odd about the way her rear wheel kept spinning, and a few riders had quietly muttered that she was faster than what they were watching made sense. At the time, it was only suspicion. Zolder turned it into proof, and the UCI did not stop at her bike. That same season, they scanned hundreds more, at the Track World Championships, at the Tour of Flanders, and at Paris-Roubaix. Not long after, a joint investigation by French and Italian journalists claimed they had found 7 more bikes rigged with hidden motors at races that spring, spotted with a thermal camera. None of those claims were ever proven, but the seed was planted, and it has never stopped growing. The strangest part came next. Van den Driesche did not really fight it. She claimed the bike was not even hers. She said it belonged to a friend, that it looked identical to her own, and that it had been carried into her pit by mistake. Under cycling's rules, that does not matter. The motor was there. The bike was in her pit. And in this sport, the rider is responsible. Full stop. She was 19 years old. When the disciplinary hearing came, she chose not to show up and defend herself. Then she quietly retired. If you think anyone caught cheating like this should be banned from the sport for life, hit subscribe. This channel digs up the cases cycling would rather you forgot, and we name them out loud. Stay with me, because the punishment is where this gets interesting. The UCI banned her for 6 years. They fined her 20,000 Swiss francs. They stripped her of her under-23 European title and her Belgian national title, and ordered her to hand back the prize money. For one motor, in one bike, ridden by one teenager, the sport came down harder than it ever had on a drug cheat. And that tells you how frightened they were. Because a motor breaks something a blood test cannot fix. You can test a rider's blood. You cannot test their bike from the side of the road. The motor they found was 22 centimeters long. Within weeks, investigators were claiming the newest ones were down to 5 centimeters, small enough to disappear into a wheel hub or a bottom bracket. If that is true, the question stops being whether anyone is cheating and becomes whether anyone could even catch them. This is the part that drives fans out of their minds because the fixes seem so obvious. Weigh every bike, since a motor and a battery add real weight in a sport where riders get disqualified over 20 grams. Tear down the winner's bike after every race, the way they strip an engine in motorsport. X-ray the top 3 finishers before anyone is allowed to touch the frame. Or do the simplest thing of all, the one thing thousands of people keep shouting: give every rider the exact same bike, hand it out on the morning of the race, and let the strongest legs win. None of it is complicated, so why does the sport drag its feet? That is the question that turns a cheating story into something darker. If the fix is this easy, and the sport still will not commit to it, then either they do not believe there is a problem, or they are afraid of what they would find if they really looked. You have to understand the world this landed in. This is a sport that already lost its biggest hero to cheating. Lance Armstrong, 7 Tour de France titles, all of them erased. A whole generation watched their childhood idol get exposed and walked away. People started calling it the Tour de Pharmacy. So when a motor turned up inside a frame, the reaction was not shock. It was worse than that. It was, of course. Of course they would. If they would inject their own blood, why wouldn't they wire their bike? That is the real damage done here. Not the one race she abandoned. The permission it gave every fan to assume the worst about every win they ever cheered for. Officially, she is still the only confirmed case in competition. 1 rider, 1 bike, 1 scanner reading. Everything else, all the rumors, all the accusations against the big names, sits in a fog with no proof attached. And maybe that is the most unsettling thing of all. Either motor doping was a one-off, a desperate teenager who got caught and scared everyone straight, or it never stopped, it just got smaller and quieter and better hidden, while the only person ever punished for it was a 19-year-old who walked away and never came back. The UCI keeps scanning thousands of bikes a year. They keep saying the system works, but that is the trouble with a war against something invisible. You can never actually prove you have won. So what do you think really happened? Was she the only one foolish enough to get caught, or the only one unlucky enough? If you believe the truth about who really won those races matters more than the trophies on the wall, subscribe. Every week we open another file the sport tried to bury, and we follow it all the way to the names nobody wants spoken out loud. The motor in Zolder was just the one they found,